The following has been made possible by the Utah branch of the International Dyslexia Association and Baseline Communications.
He learned his times tables by singing them. And that was kind of when they finally came out and said, you know, he's dyslexic and he needs to learn differently.
Just simple little nursery rhymes that we would try to get him to, you just go over and most little children sing, or he just couldn't get them and couldn't remember songs or words to the songs. He'd just make up his own.
My first grader had a lot of homework. Everything took him a very long time. And it was confusing to me even at that point because he's very bright. He could figure out any problem.
I'd have to ask my mom for help, and we'd work on it for just hours and hours. Just a simple 5-minute assignment would take me like an hour.
I really didn't like school up until pretty recently, but that was because I couldn't understand what was going on, because the teacher would write the directions on the board, read the directions, do your assignment type thing, and I couldn't do that.
For parents and children, the frustrations of working with a learning disability can be impacting. What might seem simple for one child may lay close to impossible for the learner with dyslexia. For kids, facing the certainty of failure every school day can color their entire academic world.
I always felt lost and didn't know how to do my math and everything, and I remember always going home crying, saying I don't want to go back to school, and it was just really traumatic and I hated it, and I don't know, it wasn't fun.
He did not like kindergarten. He did not like first grade. He did not like second grade. It was very difficult each morning to get him to want to go to school.
I knew I was going to have to read and write, and back then, I had a lot of trouble with reading and writing, and I just didn't like going to school.
Perhaps, beyond the impact of how kids with dyslexia feel about school, is how they feel about themselves.
I feel like I'm the slowest kid in my class, kind of. I've always felt like I'm not yet like the other kids because I always read slower and stumble over words and maybe miss a few words.
I'd be like, oh, I don't feel like regular kids. And
It felt upsetting that I couldn't do what everybody else could do in my grade.
And for some, the frustration may cut even deeper.
Actually, sometimes it really pushes me down. I just can't figure out stuff. I've just really have a hard time with it sometimes. I'm not really gonna go into details, but there's just been some times where I just wanted to give up and forget everything and just sit there on my bed and just stay forever.
It has been estimated that 1 in every 7 school students has some form of dyslexia. A dyslexic child looks like any other student. They like to play, talk, create, explore, and learn. But learning for these kids looks different than it does for most other students. When the delivery of instruction can be tailored to match a dyslexic child's unique way of processing language, they find success in learning, and that success is reflected in other areas of their life. For Tom, that success wasn't found until after he and his mother, Shay, recognized that Tom's struggle to read and write was linked to dyslexia.
We bribed him a lot. A lot. We had a calendar one year that if he would practice reading through the whole school year, only missing 5 days through the whole school year of practicing reading, he would get a go-kart at the end of the year. He earned the go-kart, but he was still stuck. when it came to the reading. It was a very difficult place to be as a parent, to see this child try so hard. And we have other children, and our other children didn't struggle like that. But it was confusing to me as a parent, because Tom really was the brighter child, yet he wasn't reading. So it didn't make sense.
I wasn't able to read directions, like 2-line directions to start an assignment. Something like read the story problem and then do the assignment from there. I couldn't read the directions that said for any homework.
Very early on, when they bring you those little books, those first reading books, he would, home from school, he would hand it to me and he'd say, "Mom, can you, it's time to read. Can you read this to me first?" And I would say, "Sure." So we would sit down and I would read him the book, and then I would hand it to him and he would read it to me word for word. He went through 3rd grade doing that before I caught on that he was memorizing it, listening to me read it once. He wasn't reading, he was memorizing. And his skills took him all the way to that level before it started catching up with him and I started having a clue that he really wasn't doing. In 4th grade, I remember him coming to me in tears with books saying, "I want to do this more than anything in the world, Mom. Please teach me to read." He gave up playing with friends because he wanted this badly. So we spent 4 to 6 hours a night. It's a lot on one subject, reading. And he still didn't get it. And of course, neither did I.
There was so much frustration and so much emotion that went into trying to do what I really couldn't do up until I got the remediation and was taught the right way.
Just prior to receiving Tom's diagnosis, and probably a big drive for that, we'd gone to the University of Utah to have some reading testing done on Tom, and we had been working our 4 to 6 hours now for 3 years straight, and we were just certain that he was going to finally make it to that 2nd grade reading level. And he came out of the test with a 1.9 grade reading level, and we both cried. We hugged each other and we said, "Yeah, I don't know what's going on." We kept asking our teachers and our professionals. I was an involved parent. I was working with him after school. He was giving everything he had. The answers weren't there. We literally left the University of Utah in tears, hand in hand, went to Barnes & Noble, and I said to the clerk, "Can you tell me the 2 best-selling books on dyslexia?" So the clerk looked that up. I bought the 2 books. 48 hours later, and no sleep, I could not stop turning the pages because they were describing my son and giving me answers for the first time.
Dyslexia is a specific type of learning disability affecting a person's ability to accurately process language. Difficulties learning language often translate to struggles in word recognition, which can lead to obstacles in learning to read and write fluently. For parents, it comes as a great relief to know why their child struggles.
It was a relief and a fear for me, because a relief to find out that, there were explanations behind his behavior. And it wasn't just that he was a stubborn child.
At first I couldn't believe it, but then I was so relieved to know that there was a reason why he was struggling so much with reading in particular and writing.
Well, I was happy to finally have some kind of label on it to say that, we've designated the problem, now let's move towards fixing it.
Finding the help to fix it is the next great hurdle these families face. For some, the help may be found at school, around the block, or across town. But for Jenny and Zach, the location wasn't so convenient.
A lot of the resources that I contacted told me, I'll be honest with you, we don't know specifically how to treat a child with dyslexia, but we'll help him. We help all kids that have learning disabilities. And they were very expensive and very, we thought, well, we don't want to spend that much money if we're not going to be getting the help that he needs. From that point on, we sought out some private tutoring, and we actually lived in St. George at the time, and we were put in contact with a specialist in Salt Lake, and he made an instant connection with her. We would make the trip from St. George to Salt Lake as often as we possibly could. It came to be about 2 to 3 times a month, and we did that for about a year. And we would feel from him after our tutoring sessions that he would come home with more confidence, and he was happier, and he felt like he could really do something. And so we absolutely knew that was the route that we needed to take.
Jenny and her husband realized they could not keep commuting 250 miles for tutoring indefinitely. After that year, their family decided to move to the Salt Lake area.
We did that, changed jobs, changed homes, changed schools, everything, and brought our family. We have four boys, and moved everyone to Salt Lake. We moved to a school in North Salt Lake that had a principal who was very open-minded and very concerned about children with dyslexia. In fact, when we moved to Salt Lake, we did some research, and that's how we ended up in North Salt Lake, was that we found out that she was very proactive in sending the teachers in her school to specialized training to help kids with this problem. And so we wanted to be in that school with that principal, and also maybe try to have Zach have some teachers that had this specialized training, which he did in 3rd grade and in 4th grade.
For children with dyslexia, support from their school is critical and can shape the rest of their education. Unfortunately, dyslexia is often not accepted as a legitimate learning disability in school systems, and getting the needed instruction and accommodations can be a fight.
Boy, did I march into the school with a new perspective and new information. And I asked them again, why is it my son can't read the word was, the, saw, could, would, but he can read the word refrigerator? And when they said, we don't know how the mind works, I said, wrong. It's a trigger word. It doesn't have a picture correlation. He's picture-based. He thinks in pictures. He reads in pictures.
And the principal told me, he said, you know that dyslexia is not covered. It's not a classification for special ed. And I said, but it is listed in special ed under specific learning disability, because I have a copy of the regs at my house, and I want him evaluated. They just said, just accept that she's just a slower learner, and it's just, it's going to be harder for her, and she'll just be at the lower end of the class, and that's just the way it's going to be. Maybe you should wait till he's in 3rd grade, and then we'll do this evaluation. And I said, no, I don't want him to fail for 3 years before you test him. I want him tested now.
With a background in teaching science and special education and a master's degree in educational psychology, Deanne is no stranger to education systems. The school agreed to test Tanner, and then came the IEP conference.
And I remember showing up to the IEP meeting with my husband, and I have been involved in probably over 1,000 IEP meetings in my last job. And I've always been on the other side of the table. And I remember walking in and seeing this group of people, and I knew, because I'm a teacher, I knew they had talked about this before I showed up. They knew what they were going to say. They knew what was going to happen. My husband and I were the only ones that didn't know what was going to happen. And it was really intimidating. And even with my experience, it was horribly intimidating. Nothing prepared me for it. And partially, too, because now there was a real emotional tie to it, because this was my son.
And they went through a discussion of all of his test scores, and really my husband and I were both thinking the same thing. They're going to say he isn't going to meet the standard, just from the way they were telling us the information. Finally, at the last, seemed like we'd gone through all this stuff, all of a sudden we hear this, and there is a discrepancy. He qualifies.
The journey for learners and parents can seem daunting, a path plagued with doubt, denial, guilt, and frustration. You begin to see the silver lining when a child learns how to guide their own learning, supplied with tools and strategies that allow them to find success. According to the International Dyslexia Association, between 15 and 20% of the population as a whole exhibit signs of dyslexia. But the manifestation of dyslexic indicators are as varied as the learners themselves. With variables such as genetics, environment, exposure to good language models, and adaptation, not all students with dyslexia will need special educational assistance. But all students with this learning disability will benefit from specialized instruction from trained professionals. Recognizing the warning signs early on is the key for parents and teachers alike. Early signs include difficulty hearing sounds in speech and late language development relating to phonological awareness. Researchers believe phonological processing may be the core deficit in students challenged with dyslexia.
That's being able to auditorily hear these sounds, being able to isolate these sounds, being able to process these sounds into a language.
Private tutors, such as Shelley Hatch, who are trained to help dyslexic children overcome their disability, have learned to recognize the signs. Shelley, a private tutor for hundreds of students over the years, recounts one such child.
He said, I've been through the system, I've had every testing throughout the state done on me, and I know I'm smart. And he did. He had 144 IQ, his phenomenal student, but yet he could not read. He was reading at a second grade level. Here he is in 9th grade, he couldn't rhyme. He couldn't isolate sound, initial sound, and reblend a word for me. And I began to think this was kind of strange, and here I was trying to get him to read words when he couldn't even decode these words.
Children with phonological processing issues, dyslexics, have an inordinately difficult time meeting the standards set by non-dyslexic peers.
Dr. Kathleen Brown is the director of the University of Utah Reading Clinic. She explains the struggle these learners have in the world of letters and words.
Severe difficulties with word recognition, being accurate. Severe difficulties with fluency as well, particularly with rate, reading quickly enough. Spelling difficulties, another red flag. In terms of identifying children who are dyslexic, who have severe reading difficulties in the classroom, the first thing that needs to happen is the teacher, the classroom teacher, sort of the captain at the helm, has to have enough background in assessment to know if the child is performing at grade level or not.
After a dyslexic student is identified, often a teacher is left wondering what to do next.
Unfortunately, there are not enough educators trained in this state or in this country, frankly, who are equipped to deal with and to respond, to address the needs effectively and efficiently of a child who has those kinds of difficulties. And so when you get that situation, you're often, unfortunately, educators, parent and child find themselves in a situation where, well, we know what's wrong. This child likely has a phonological deficit, but we don't have anybody trained who knows how to address that. That's unfortunate, I think, in this society, because what it means is, here's a child, we know what's wrong, but yet we aren't able to deliver the kinds of services that child needs.
And I can say this because I'm a school teacher. I went through the special ed training. I wasn't trained as thoroughly as I needed to be trained. Teachers are not out there saying, I want to ruin this child's life. I want this child to fail. They're not out there doing that. They haven't been given the training. They haven't been given the resources. They're given large classes. They're told, fix the problems, and it can be overwhelming.
Some parents may try alternative programs if their child's needs are not being met in traditional school settings, resulting in a higher than average percentage of dyslexic learners in private and charter schools.
The ratio's going up because they're not being able to get their needs met in a traditional school. The public school system has already failed these children, and they're not able to get the education they need. They're falling behind. They're becoming labeled. Their self-worth is being destroyed. So these parents search for another answer out there.
And for some, the search leads them to private tutors. But realistically, the cost of private tutoring is a burden not easily carried by all families.
The help is out there now for these children. The awareness is out there, but it's a financial burden. It's a time essential burden. It's a struggle for these families all the way around to be able to get their children the intervention that they need. If these programs were in the school, it would be amazing what success could come to these schools and these children's lives, and the financial burden that would not be upon these children and these families.
He went to tutoring, he learned some of the rules and the lessons, and I learned how to probably be a better parent in helping him with homework, and kind of took a step back and let him take control and learned how he was learning.
As a result of intervention, he can read, and he does read, and he is thrilled to be able to read it.
She's in the second to highest reading group in our class. She's in the second to highest math, class.
When the needed support is not found in a child's school, parents may look to private tutoring. These tutors understand the struggle learners with dyslexia face in school. They see the students as the highly intelligent kids they are. Finding the key these learners need to unscramble the world of words is their primary objective.
She teaches you actually how to decode it, how to read it, how to pronounce it properly, how to say it, how to actually process it.
David went to a summer school with Shelley and learned different skills, and I was able to sit in on part of those, and it was just amazing because I'm like, oh, that's why that word is the way it is.
Vowel, consonant, vowel, divide before the consonants, and accent the first syllable.
How there's some of the rules that my tutor taught me, they just come and then I'm like, oh, that's how that works.
Individualized instruction, custom designed to match the needs of the student, is powerful. But an understanding that all kids learn differently has to come first.
Very few people who are dyslexic have just the problem with, I have a difficult time decoding. There's usually other pieces that come with it. The handwriting piece. Not everyone has every piece. The handwriting piece, the auditory processing piece, the not being able to think of the word that you want to use or using the wrong word.
Having someone explain to him how he could learn, that it would be a different way, that his brain worked a little bit differently, gave him confidence.
Because dyslexia isn't really a disability, it's just a matter of thinking differently than everybody else, processing things differently than everybody else. It didn't make him any less, it just meant he had to go about it from a different point of view.
Bundled with this unique way of learning come some amazing talents.
My husband and I say he thinks outside the box. His solutions for anything, any situation, whether it's a math problem at school or just some kind of logic situation at home with friends, he puts things together and my mind can't comprehend how he does it. And that has got to be because of his dyslexia.
Tom has some amazing gifts. He is very much a visual thinker. He can see things three-dimensionally.
He loves to put anything together. He's very mechanically oriented. He gets the big picture a lot of times where some others may not, and he just kind of sees the world a little differently, I think.
Being dyslexic isn't a disadvantage. That it has allowed him the opportunity to think in ways that no one else can.
The combination of these strengths and sound research-based teaching methods can yield amazing results.
Probably 8 months of tutoring. It was about halfway through first grade. And I pick him up from tutoring, and he says, "Mom, I know how to rhyme. Give me a word, any word, and I'll rhyme it." And so all the way home, and it's like a 35, 40-minute drive. He's asking me for words, and I'm giving him words and rhyme. His dad comes home, "Give me a word, Mom. Dad, give me a word, Dad. I'll rhyme it." And you know what? It sounds stupid, but you've got parents that are in tears because their kid can rhyme. And it was his Helen Keller moment. That's what I compare it to, because it reminds me of that time when she finally understands that what is being spelled into her hand is water. And then she gets that concept and she's going everywhere trying to learn the words. And that's what he was like. It was like, I can rhyme, and I can rhyme any word that you can give me.
Morgan has changed in the time that he's known that he's had dyslexia and has the intervention tutoring. As a result, he can read, and he does read, and he is thrilled to be able to read, and he's not satisfied with what his classmates are reading. Even last month, he read A Tale of Two Cities, simplified, of course, for 4th grade, but he loved it, and he loved the fullness of it all. And it has made him feel like he can do anything.
But now, 5 years later, and you have a straight A student who's works hard for his grades, and we still have struggles once in a while, but you think the whole world is his playground. The whole world is opportunity for him. There's nothing that can stop him. And when they get that confidence that I can read, their whole face changes, everything changes, and you just think, this kid is gonna go places in life.
One of my favorite classes, I think, is accounting right now, and I never would have thought I could go into accounting class because of the numbers, and it takes me a lot longer to type in the numbers, not to get them mixed up and everything, but it's so much fun to have the accomplishment of adding up all the numbers and having them equal everything out and be like, look, I did it, I didn't mix up any of the numbers.
I've been doing really good academically. I've been able to do most of the assignments. I'm in honors English now, also in an AP class, and really hard foreign language.
And now she loves school. She feels so wonderful about herself, and she's totally, on task and on every project, and she's just a whole different kid. It's amazing.
Now he's a 3rd grader, and he's reading at grade level. And he does not remember. He doesn't remember when he couldn't do those things. It's just amazing that he went through all that, and to him it's like, I read fine. I've always read fine.
For families who cannot afford the cost of private remediation, the struggle will continue. In some cases, the damage to self-esteem from years of failure will leave scars coloring how they feel about themselves for the rest of their lives. For those that can manage the cost and are willing to make, in some cases, great sacrifice, the transformation, while gradual, is amazing. Learners gain confidence in their own abilities, find value in who they are. They take ownership of their own education, and in so doing, they take control of their future.
Gosh, these kids, you give them wings and they fly. They just soar through those skies. And I look at this kid who, brought home report cards with all N's and I's and notes from teachers. Probably should go to resource, probably should not be in public school, blah, blah, blah. And you get a child who's straight A's, and you think, wow, look what he's done. And think of the future. What's he going to do in the future? It's all open. Everything's wide open.